What's up? Hey, my fellow Age Groupies. Welcome to another episode of the Age Groupies Podcast. Hi, I'm Mike Ergo, and along with my co-host, Lindsay, Hiken, we are here to talk to you about all things related to endurance sports from an amateur athlete perspective. We talk about how to have fun along the way and stop taking ourselves so seriously all the time. Come on, you guys. You can all follow the show at Instagram at Age Groupies. Join the Age Groupies page on Facebook and look us up by name, Lindsay, Hiken, and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have any questions, comments, or topic ideas, hit us up. Email us at agegroupies@gmail.com. And if you enjoy the show, you guys, do me a solid here. Do me one solid this week. Leave a rating and review on iTunes. We'll read them on the show. iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. We really appreciate that. That helps us boost up in the ratings and reach more people who need to hear this message. All right, you guys. Today, we are speaking with Dana Jones. Dana Jones, just like my co-host Lindsay, is another powerful African-American woman in the triathlon community. She hosts her own triathlon. Really awesome way for people to get involved in the sport up here in Sonoma County in Santa Rosa. You guys, Dana has been a friend for over a year now. And as you'll see in this show, she really brings what we need in this sport. More inclusion, more heart, more spirit. And she has a genuine enjoyment, you guys, of seeing people succeed, seeing people try something new. So with that being said, enjoy the show. Dana Jones, welcome to Age Groupies. I'm glad to have you on the show finally. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Well, I'm COVID good, I should say.
COVID good. That's a good qualifier. I like that a lot because COVID good isn't 2019 good.
No, not even 2018 good.
Not even 2018 good. Yeah, the bar is set rather low this year. I mean, sometimes, you know, it's enough if you just wake up and brush your teeth. Just say, yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good day.
Or put on, normal clothes or,
Yeah, exactly.
pajamas.
Yeah, so, but my day is going pretty well. I got out there with Team RWB, did a 4-mile run. So I'm feeling good. My dog is behind me, asleep on the couch. So he's happy.
Yeah, he had his workout this morning in the foggy.
Mm-hmm. That's what I love about Sonoma County is a lot of these foggy mornings. Like it's perfect running weather up here.
For sure. I can't remember. I was reading some study that was talking about that the perfect for people doing ultras and stuff like that, the perfect temperature is about between 46 and like 52 degrees.
Oh, wow.
Because their body temperatures go up. So then having that coolness around you keeps them stable. And that when it starts to get hot, it just adds so much stress and tension onto their bodies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It makes for some cold starts, though.
Right. Well, triathlon is a whole different animal.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to hear about how you got into the sport, how you got into coaching, how you got into putting your own race. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about what your experience in triathlon has been like. And okay. How you came into the sport. So where do we start?
Well, I guess I started in about 2012-ish. I had a girlfriend who I played softball with who's like training for Ironman. And, I was like, I always wanted to do that because, ever since I was a little kid watching, the wide world of sports on, ABC and seeing all the people going out, like, every October was so exciting for me to see like who was racing. And part of it was because you just didn't see triathlon on TV. And that was the only time that it was on TV. And to me, it was just so inspiring, just watching people essentially torture themselves for the betterment of their own personalities or their own, whoever they are. And, just it was something that was interesting. And she said, hey, let's do this little pool sprint down in Emeryville. I was like, I don't know, dude, I can't really swim. She's like, of course you could swim. Everybody could swim. It's like, no, I can't swim. So, we got in the pool and I, what I call now prolonged drowned for about 20 minutes. And, I thought I was going to have a heart attack trying to get across the water and whatever. She's like, you only have to do it 4 times. It's a little mini sprint. You'll be fine. It's like, okay. And so, April morning, go down there to Emeryville, and it was probably, I don't know, 40 degrees or something. Like it was some like record cold morning. But the beautiful thing was the pool was heated, and, and I didn't know what the hell I was getting myself into. And so then you get all excited waiting, and they're playing music and you're all jacked, and get in the pool and you swim back and forth twice and then you're done. And then hopped on the bike when it was still 40 degrees, and you're riding around and you become like one big popsicle as you're going through. And then you ran, I
That's
think we ran
cold.
2 miles, and yeah, it was cold. And, and I got done. I was like, this is really cool. And so I started to get into it. And I think like fast forward, I was training because I was going to do a sprint. I was like, okay, I'm ready for the big time here, right? Big time for me was I'm going to do a sprint.
Yeah.
And I was at the pool, and there's like this guy who's like 85 years old. And I was, struggling back and forth across the pool. And this guy's like flowing, just shows up at, whatever, 7 o'clock in the morning. And he's just rolling back and forth like he's part of the water. And then, 40 minutes later, he gets up and he's out, and he's like, I did my 80 laps. And then,
Well,
just
can I
walks
ask
away.
you, in that moment when you saw him swimming like that, what was your first reaction, your first feeling? Was it amazement? Was it annoyance? Was it befuddlement? Like what was it like?
I think I was enamored with the beauty of it. Just because, you see him and, of course you make judgments, right? He's some skinny little old guy, kind of thing. And what can he really do? And then you see him and you're like, wow, that's just beautiful watching him slice through the water. And I think the best part about it was that he was actually able to like get out of the pool. Right.
Yes.
And sometimes, people do this, torture swim sessions where you're trying to get out of the pool and you're, climbing and, grasping for the sides,
Yeah.
kind of thing, or your legs are giving out as you getting up there. And he just walked right out of the pool. He's like, have a good day, and finally, I think a couple of days later, I got the nerve to talk to him about it. And he's like, total immersion swimming, look it up. So I went home and I started, watching videos, and I read Terry Laughlin's book about it. And, I was like, oh, swimming doesn't have to be a struggle, and my friend was right. I knew how to swim. I learned how to swim when I was like, 7 or 8. My mother was a swimmer, and, but in New Jersey, we just didn't have access. Those urban areas, you can't just roll down to the pool. It's not a mile away. It's 45 minutes away. And you had to have money to go there because you didn't just drive 45 minutes to go swimming. It was a thing, right? You're picnicking or you're buying snacks or you're staying up there for a while.
A lot of barriers.
Right. So I just didn't, have access. I mean, I had some friends that had some pools, but, all pools were whatever, 3 feet high, 4 feet high, whatever your backyard, above ground kind of stuff is. So I never did that. And it just kind of occurred to me that swimming was, I liked it. And I think, unfortunately, being African American, I started to believe that, the mantra of Black people can't swim. And that really, and then I, thought about it. It's like, well, how do I know that's true? It's like, here I am, and I'm trying to give this a go. But it's one of those things where you just don't see other people around as role models, and role models are important. So it just, it was just odd, and I just decided that, just in all the hard-headed ways that you can be, that it's like, all right, I'm going to make this work. I don't know jack about it, but I'm going to go.
Yeah, you had that grit and determination. You're like, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to figure it out.
Right. And, so I sat there and like watched videos and practiced and, practiced some more, and had a couple of friends who I was willing to practice with. And then one day it just clicked. And, it was just a beautiful thing to like, swim 100 yards and not have my heart rate be like 180.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this can be enjoyable, and kind of, I finally, I would say probably after a year or so, got to that point where, now I slipstream through the water, and it
Yeah.
feels, I don't know, just, now it's my favorite part, right,
Yes.
of
I
everything
hear you.
is just the peace of, being in the water and sliding through it and not fighting it.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I love the swim so much. There's something about finding your breath, the rhythm of it, especially when you're not fighting the water anymore and you're slipping through it. You have that
Right.
slipstream, you have that glide.
And yeah. And of course, triathlon is a whole different bird because, when you're in the pool and, everything's neat and you're just sliding through and doing your own thing, it's great. You're like, I love the pool. This is wonderful. Hey, you visit with people and then you get into a race and then people are swimming over the top of you and they're
Yes.
kicking you in the face and they're grabbing your legs and all kinds of stuff. And it gets, and then you have to up it up, right? Like you have to knock it up a notch and go, okay, so, a friend of mine was like, you have to be okay with drowning. And I was like,
That's an
that
interesting way
sounds
of
really
putting it.
messed up.
Yes.
I was like, that's really messed up. And he's like, no, he's like, you have to come to terms with it and be okay with it. And I think it was like 2013. I was doing Vineman, which was, Ironman Santa Rosa before Ironman Santa Rosa came to be. And, so I'm in the river and the women's group that I was in, the men came after us. And it was like kind of the testosterone ridden guys, like the
Yes.
late 40 guys that are just all amped up and are going to prove something. And,
Right. The first
so I'm
500
just,
meters of the swim.
yes. And so I'm doting along, doing my little swim. And then all of a sudden I felt somebody grab my leg and then essentially use me to get past.
Yeah. They're doing a muscle up on your body, essentially, right?
Yes. Yeah. And, with of course, the palm in the back of the head to really emphasize the push off.
Yeah.
And, and at that moment I was like, oh, this is what he was talking about. I just let the guy slide over me. And then, I kind of was like, that was messed up. And then just kept, but I didn't let it take me out of my purpose, and my purpose was like, this is the best time I'm going to have today. Because it's going to be 95 degrees and I'm going to be out on that bike and everything else. And I'm going to enjoy this moment because this is going to be fun. So,
yeah, that's a tough order for a lot of people, not to be shaking or not to get shook during the swim, especially when you have someone bump you, swim over you, grab you, because that can throw a lot of people off. And some people don't recover from that. What about you, or what about your training and what you did to get ready for that allowed you to keep going where some people would stop?
Part of it, I just think that it's the, fortitude that you have in yourself. And, because some people do, and I've seen like well-tuned, triathletes, because of course, whenever you start a race, you're always comparing, right? How people look in wetsuits, do they look like a seal or do they look like a shark?
Yeah. Yes.
And of course, we're always judging like, oh, all right, I wish I was that fit. All right, I got to work for that. And you go out there and there's, I think, there's a mindset that you have to get into where you're like, this isn't a big deal. Like we're all out doing the same thing. What is it, like common suffering, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we're all doing this together and, there's going to be stuff. And I think that's the biggest thing is like going into anything and knowing that it's going to be fucked up. And then going,
I like
all right.
that. So when it happens, you're not surprised.
Right. And of course there's things that throw you off. Like I remember racing hits in Berryessa and, when you get into the water and it's 50 something degrees.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
That adds a whole different dimension to the panic and the weirdness of it. But again, it's like, if you just stop for a moment, tread water, look around, like nobody's face that's around you is like serene.
Yeah.
Like,
so you're
God,
not out of place. You're just like everybody else and it's happening as it should.
Yeah. And you can chat. I mean, I talk to people while I'm swimming and I'm like, this is messed up. And they're like, yeah, it is, but we're doing it. We paid for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the look of camaraderie, especially when something's fucked up.
Yeah. And again, it's like, we paid for this. This is what, we chose to do this. We can, if we're just home or chilling, you're like, oh, the pool's cold. I'm not going to get in it. But it's like, when you know that you're racing, you're like, and I'm kind of cheap, right? So I don't want to get cheated out of my cash. I'm going to go, I'm going to race, and be a popsicle for a little bit and work it out. But, there's things that triathlon really does teach you how to dig deep and really, just draw from, I don't know, the bowels of your, your vessel, right? And really, there's something, like I said, like going back to being a little kid, there's like something so inspiring about the sport. And it's not like anything else. And I'm not saying anything else is easier. I'm not saying anything else is harder. It's just unique in the fact that, you're doing this and you fall apart. I mean, I don't know how many people that race and did the whole race and were like, I felt fantastic the entire time. And it was just such a joy to be out there.
Yeah, it's like, makes for a boring story
like,
too.
Right. People are like, it sucked. I was puking on mile 12, whatever kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, man, wow, like you get so far and you think you're golden and then, you forgot to eat because you're like feeling so good. And then all of a sudden you're like, why am I crying? It's like, oh, because I haven't eaten in 3 hours, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, what I noticed about you, Dana, is you have I'd say like a very spiritual approach to triathlon. And is that something that inspired you to go from athlete to coach and help inspire other people?
I think it does. And it just, it's like almost like the common sense kind of approach to things where it's, like I said, like, it's going to be fucked up and you're like, it's going to be fucked up. All right. You good with that? No, not really. Okay. Well, we're still going to do it anyway, and I always think of, when I was 17, 18 years old, I was visiting Seton Hall University because I was going to go to school there and whatever. And the first thing I saw was the ROTC crew like jogging by, and then you hear like the cadences. And of course, military cadences are always funny because they kind of call out the torture that you're receiving. And then you're like, yeah, and I love it.
Yes, exactly.
And, I realized, because I did join because I was, like, yeah, this is super cool. I'm going to do this. And, when you're in basic and you're rolling through that stuff, you're like, oh, you're brainwashing me. It's like, oh, you're brainwashing me to enjoy torture. And, so I think racing's the same way. It's like you get out there and you're like, it's cold or it's, hot or you're cramping or whatever. And you're like, yeah, I'm doing this though. This is, I'm embracing it. And,
yes.
When you do things like throw yourself out of an airplane or, any of those things, you have to go, wow, this is really stupid. Normal people aren't doing this, but hey, like, why not? Let's do it anyway.
Yeah. There's a certain amount of brainwashing or indoctrination that has to take place to get people to do that stuff or start out at least. Because with running, with swimming, even cycling, you'll get the endorphins afterwards and you'll get the feel-good chemicals. But to convince someone to get in cold water or to get out of cold water and then get on a bike that's going to dry them off and chill them to the bone, that takes some convincing.
I don't know though. Like, I do, fast forward, I started, during the drought times. It's like we have different times. Right now we're in the virus times. But a few years ago we had drought times and Ukiah was canceled. And a group of friends and I were like kind of pissed off, right? It's like, oh, we want to go and swim anyway. And of course there was no lake. Like it was dried up to like some little mud bog, like dead center.
Yeah.
And that was it. And so we're like, we can have our own triathlon. And so, in stealth mode, we're like, let's go to the, local pool and, pay for lap swim, get in there, swim 16 laps and then get out. And, I don't know if I just have willing participants that are just as crazy as I am or whatever, but we went ahead and we did our little triathlon and we, fielded a couple of kids to watch the bikes while we're in the pool. And
I love it. Yeah.
Thing. And, but to watch people finish is crazy. Like watching somebody finish a triathlon after all, like you don't even know what they did, right? Like you don't know what, everybody's got their own mental struggles and, how they convince themselves to do something. And like watching as they cross that finish line and seeing that satisfaction on their face.
Oh,
And it's
nothing
like,
better.
for me, right, for me, it's inspiring, right? That's why all the pros in Kona, right, they finish their race, they go do their press stuff, they get a snack, and then, at 11:30 at night, they come back to the finish line because that's where all the inspiration happens. And I think that's what triathlon is that, people do it once, right? There's always one crazy friend who says, hey, man, you should do this. This sounds like a great idea. We're going to, slap all these 3 events in one friggin' day and let's get it knocked out. And you're like, no, I don't want to do it. And then you're like, oh, I'll do it. And then as soon as you do, you get the bug.
The bug,
And people get
yes.
excited. And then that's it. It's like they're just running, they're off and running. And then eventually you hit that moment where you need coaching or you need, some kind of support to help you get through it and to figure stuff out, because it's almost like forgive me for anybody who has it's like a pyramid scheme, right? You start off with little races and then you're like, I can advance to the next level. I'm going to do this sprint and then I'm going to do an Olympic and then I'm going to do a 70.3. And then, it's like you're just feeding the animal there with what you want to get done. So I think it has its own, built-in inspiration piece. And for me, it's just harnessing people's excitement and kind of helping them understand that they can do anything. It's like when you're swimming, you can stop. You can stop and wade, not wade, but, tread water for a moment and get yourself together. I mean, I've seen people do, back floats and, whatever. I mean, I watched a guy do like an entire 70.3 swim on his back, and I was like, hey, he's out here doing it, can't judge.
He made it happen.
Right. You can coast on a bike, if your legs are tired and, just work it out, or you can get off and walk. You can walk while you're running or, stop and walk and, whatever. So it's when you think about it in that realm, you can do it, and it's just getting people, I think, to that start point where they have confidence in themselves to be able to do it.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many intimidating things about triathlon because I think maybe I'm not as evangelical about triathlon as I was about like CrossFit, but that's still my favorite cult. Love CrossFit. But with triathlon, there's so many intimidating things. One is you see people show up with these bikes that look like spaceships, that are just like full, disc in the back. You got people with like crazy aero helmets that look like they're a fighter pilot. You have, I think even the word triathlon, it sounds like something that should only be in the Olympics, like a decathlon or a biathlon. It just sounds like something that only Olympians should do. So there's so many barriers and people have these ideas of what it looks like. And I don't think that the triathlon, there's a lot of people in the sport who aren't very welcoming. There's, I think, a lot more of us that are, but there's just enough of people that are very like focused on like getting their best time that it can put a weird vibe in someone just watching. They're like, I don't know if this is for me. This is scary.
Well, and that's, when I first started, after I did that first race, I started volunteering because I was working with Girls on the Run. And so they had a, rest stop. And of course, they chose Chalk Hill, which is, I don't know, what is it, mile 35-ish, 40-ish now?
Towards the end, decent climb.
Yeah, it's towards the end of the 70.3. And it's got this, crawling kind of climb that just where you think you're okay and then you're not, and then you keep going. And it's just, on an early day, mile 10, you're like, you could pop up and over that hill, no problem. And then, but mile 40, you're like, oh, this sucks. And we were up there and it was just awesome. It's just seeing people and whatever. But then there were the people who were pissed off that you didn't hand their Gatorade the right way and they smacked it and then they're screaming at kids. And it's like, dude, she's 9 and she's like all excited and jacked and out here cheering for you. And you're calling her names because you didn't slow down for half a second to grab the Gatorade bottle or
exactly.
Whatever. And it's noon. So you're not winning.
You're not winning. Nobody gives a shit about your race outside of you.
Not even your
Right.
wife. She doesn't care. She just pretends like she does to make you happy.
Right. Right. And I was like, oh, I don't really, I don't like that. And, so when we got into it and when I decided, one of the things that I decided about my own personal race was that we weren't going to have it timed, because I wasn't going to watch like some 30-year-old try to crush a 9-year-old and, scoot past him on the finish line and be like, yeah, I won. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
no, sorry, dude, that's like another race. And, so that was the big thing, is like, what are the things that you need to make a successful race? It's like, well, obviously you need people to sign up, but again, like you get one and then all of a sudden it becomes a domino effect where people start going.
Mm-hmm.
You start seeing them showing up in like packs of 10 or whatever, because, they convince themselves they're going to do it, or it's a bucket list item or whatever. Then you got to have like the environment. What kind of vibe do you want to have for your race? Do you want to have fun? Do you want to have, whatever? So like one of the things is that I have pretty much mostly triathletes that are volunteers. And so they get it and they understand. And so, my big thing as a race director is like, you need to understand that people worked up all their nerve to get here, to wake up this morning and show up. And it's like, and so you are going to cheer them on. We're not going to clean up the course before they're done.
Oh,
because
yes.
I've heard a lot of people have done that, and I've done that, where I think I did it with 70.3, where I was running and this, CHP is behind me. It's 90 degrees and I can hear his air conditioning clicking on and clicking off in the car.
That's such a demoralizing feeling. Oh my God, yes.
Right. And I've talked to a couple of people who like have been running races, and, they're like, I didn't know where to go because somebody cleaned up all the stuff.
Oh man.
And they left the route. And it's like, how can you do that to somebody? It's, they're like, first of all, they're paying you, so you should have at least the respect as a business person to not close the store before they're done shopping, kind of deal.
That's a great way of putting it.
And secondly, it's like, they need you, right? It's like, if you want them to come back, or if you want them to continue on, right? Because everybody participating in triathlon is good for everybody, right? It's like, a healthier way of life. Everybody's racing, they go to my race, they'll go to your race, that kind of thing. It's like, you just have to support people. And then on top of it, like I said, being, whatever, DFL, and having that, like that dead fucking last moment where you're like, nobody's going to be out here. Nobody loves me. I can't believe I did this, and then have 35 people standing at the finish line cheering you on and celebrating you, it's like, oh, all right, this is cool. And you watch them cry. I mean, the stories I've heard from athletes that have come to race, they don't really care about the time. They don't care about like, oh, I, did my run with this much, or, whatever, or that kind of thing. It's like, they care that they finished. And,
Yes.
One year I had my son taking pictures at the finish line, and I think he was like a junior in high school, and he was in ArcQuest, so he was doing like photography stuff and, whatever. And we had two women that crossed the finish line, and both of them burst into tears. And it was, they were about 5 minutes apart. And he's like, I didn't know what to do. He's like, I took a picture of them. He goes, but then they started to cry, and I didn't know why they were crying. And then I felt kind of awkward. And he's like, so then I was trying to give them privacy so that they can be with their families. And interestingly enough, both of them wrote me. And one of them, the one woman that had cried and had her entire family there, had lost her child. And she had a miscarriage and was in such a deep depressive state that she didn't think she would ever do anything again. And a girlfriend of hers convinced her that a triathlon was a good way for her to kind of get over the hump and start to work her way back to healing. And so, when she crossed the finish line, she just was like so overwhelmed and so proud of herself. And then of course, honoring her lost baby, and and so, the things that he was witnessing were so epically personal,
Yes.
and the good thing, he got it, right? So, there's hope for our next generations, is that they can save that piece. On the other end, it was good for me to know, it's just not about people racing.
Yes. You never know what someone's motivation is and what it means for them to finish. And that is so cool. You never know like what you could have launched, in someone's life because they finished the race. For them, that was an accomplishment that leapfrogs them into doing something really cool, because all of a sudden what they didn't believe they could do, they did, and proved themselves they're probably better than they thought, like we all are, and was able to go on and do really cool things. And it all starts with something like a triathlon.
Right. And I like it. It's definitely a gateway drug.
Yep.
You know, and of course this is a good thing to be addicted to a certain level. I mean, there's still people out there that really do believe they need the $5,000 bike or the $700 helmet and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Right.
and I mean, I have those people, it's kind of funny. I have those people show up to my race. I'm like, you know, I have people that are on mountain bikes. I had one lady who had a fold out bike.
That's
She's like,
awesome.
can I use
love
it?
that.
And I was like, I don't know. Those wheels are kind of tiny. You're going to be exhausted after riding 9 miles on those, you know, whatever it is, like 10-inch wheels.
Yeah.
You know, but she did it, you know. And even last year we had a kid that was a kindergartner that was out there, although we had a kind of, because somebody said, can they use training wheels? And I was like, why not? You know?
Yeah.
And then I guess the mom ran the entire time next to her, you know, while she was going, and she's chatting about how she was going to go to school the next day, and she was going to bring her medal, and she was going to show everybody and all her friends that she did a triathlon. And I was like, that's like super cool. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if anything that I've ever participated in where I get those feelings, where it's where you feel, you know, I guess it's somebody else's joy. You know, you get to share in that moment with them.
That is a very cool way of putting it. You're sharing in someone else's joy and someone else's accomplishment. You get to be there like for them and with them in that. And that is a special thing. That feeling.
And just to witness it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can see what, you know, one of the things I love about you is you're passionate about the sport, and you're passionate about not just the activities of swimming, biking, running, but the passion you have for seeing athletes succeed, or people who are becoming athletes succeed. And it's so contagious, because I get goosebumps. I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it and hearing the stories of you watching someone do a race.
Well, it's cool. And I think that's why I enjoy this race. You know, people are like, oh, it has so much potential. It can grow to, you know, whatever. And it's like, I have my limit of where I want to grow it, but I want to make sure that it keeps that grassroots, you know, very beginnerish type feeling. Like, I want people to feel supported. I want them to feel the love. And, you know, it's especially now, and I don't know, right? You know, in the beginning, we talked about like, what is racing going to look like? And of course, this morning I was reading and I saw that the 70.3 in Lubbock, Texas was canceled. And, you know, and people are pissed, right? Because they're like, you know, athletes were already in the air when they, you know, made that decision. And, you know, people are, you know, throwing away their money, and Ironman should have done it, and, you know, all this other stuff. And, you know, I mean, first of all, after reading in some detail, finding out Ironman was the one who pulled the plug. But you know, I guess what people don't understand is that, you know, you could pay for Ironman to sponsor your race, or you can, you know, have naming rights or whatever, and it's not really an Ironman run event. And this particular one is, you know, sponsored by Ironman, but it's, you know, another company's race. And they were like, we're doing this. And then finally Ironman's like, no, you're not doing it, because your COVID cases are spiking and you're running the risk of putting, you know, 2,000 athletes into a cesspool of, you know, virus stuff. And then they're all going to hop on a plane and go somewhere else. And that's going to be horrible. You know, but as a race director, you start thinking about like, you know, well, when is the time that you pull the plug? When do you decide like this isn't a good idea? I mean, you know, 3 years ago we had the fires here, and you know, it was one of the things where you flipped it, right? You know, you're enjoying this euphoria watching, you know, I think I had a 77-year-old lady finish, and she was so excited, and we were all excited that she finished, and you know, there's joy. And then I didn't even get a chance to unpack all the equipment. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I start getting phone calls about how the town's on fire. And of course, I thought that was bullshit until I looked outside, and then I was like, oh wow, we're on fire. And you know, then you have to like pack up and get the hell out of Dodge. So, you know, things can happen in an instant. This particular situation, we have a lot of information, right? We know we're seeing the rates go up and down. We're seeing the testing finally go up where people are getting tests and stuff. And we're understanding how we stay out of, the fast lane, I guess would be the best way to put it. It's like,
Right.
wearing a mask and doing all those things. But we're also in this desperation where we're also triathletes. And damn, like I just want to race, right? I mean, I have clients that were doing Santa Rosa and then they're all, crying because it got postponed and now they're happy that it's coming. And I'm going, oh, I don't know, right? It's that iffy
Mm-hmm.
situation. And, for my race, I can get away with not offering water. I can I could tell people, hey, make sure your bottle's full, that kind of stuff. And we'll have water over the side for you to, grab and put it in port so that nobody really has to come in contact. We talked about the idea of having stalls for the athletes of just like, this is your, 5x5 area or 6x6 area. And this is where you get to be, and you don't get to come out of it except to move towards, leaving the transition area or whatever. But that's for, 100 athletes, 150 athletes. And that's very
Right.
different than somebody's got to deal with 2,000 athletes.
I know, scaling that to over in the thousands, that's a much different animal.
Right. And again, transition areas, of course, are a nightmare because, the idea behind triathlon is that you try to maximize the minimum amount of space. Right. And it's like, say, when you have bike racks, it's like, oh, well, the common courtesy is like 2 feet per bike or whatever. So you can put 5 bikes on a rack. And it's like, no, in the big races, you're trying to shove 10 bikes on a rack or, those kinds of things. And of course, if I'm breathing heavy because I just got out of the pool or I just got back from my bike ride, and of course, stress breathing is more guttural, right? So, I'm just spewing all kinds of stuff on somebody else, but you don't really think about it. But now I'm thinking about it. It's like, okay, well, do you have a transition area? Do we just lay our bikes down and not have bike racks at all because you don't want to have a common area for people to kind of congregate? There's nutrition, not that big of a deal for my race, but, I don't know if I'd want to do 70.3 unsupported. What's going to happen? Like, I'm going to run out of water. I'm going to run out of food. Maybe not food, but I'm definitely going to run out of water, and, does it become like a thing, like when you do the full where you have your, your bag, and we have bags at certain locations, for
like you have multiple special needs bags.
Yeah. But then that's something that somebody has to handle, and do you really want, and of course it's plastic. So, and right now, I guess it's 45 minutes. If it's out in the sun, that something will hold the virus or not, or I don't even think anybody knows. So, I mean, you're trying to reduce the, touch points so that you're not spreading the disease. But on the other end, it's like, you want to make people happy. I don't think anybody ever gets rich putting on a triathlon. Well, some people, I definitely don't.
The majority of people don't, for sure.
Yeah. And, it's like, if you want to grow up and be a, race director, that is not one of the things that's going to get you like a house in the hills. And
more likely driving a 95 Honda Civic.
2007.
Yes.
That's what I got going on. But so it's just one of those things where it's like, and you also have to value people. And, so like I sent out a survey to ask athletes, like, how do you feel about this? And, people are like, some people are like, man, I'm going to race. I don't care what happens. And other people are like, I'm going to wait to see what goes on here. Like, how the governor feels about stuff, how the health officers are calling out what we need to do to stay safe.
Yep. Yeah. So there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that depend on other things, a big chain, a big domino train. So the racing in this COVID world, I guess we're calling it, is a difficult thing because we are reinventing racing, where, like you said before, it used to be for transition areas, maximizing the minimal amount of space. And now that is the opposite of what we want to do. So it's totally flipping it around. And it's going to be interesting to see how racing changes and, the enjoyment level of the athletes balanced with the safety of the athletes and everyone they're in contact with.
Right. And, of course that, contact tracing aspect of it, right? Which is, what happens if somebody does get sick and then, I have to figure out like who are the volunteers who, came in contact with this person, or did everybody come in contact with this person? So that's
Yeah.
where you try to limit your numbers and say, okay, maybe this year we race, but we race with 50,
Mm-hmm.
or just so that people get that thing, or you offer a virtual option.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I don't even know if the pool's going to be open in our area, because I know they're not issuing any permits up until Labor Day, and our event is after Labor Day. But again, it's I don't. I guess the weird thing is that I don't see us going back to what we did before. Like
It's
I
hard to
just,
see that. Mm-hmm.
yeah, think about like the pool. I mean, obviously you're in the water and that's probably not a huge amount of transmission, but everybody's touching doors, everybody's going to the bathroom, everybody possibly is showering or touching a locker or doing whatever. And it's like, so right now you can't go into the locker room. You have to show up in your stuff, swim, leave your towel on the side of the pool, put your towel on, get in your car and go home,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. It's like they try to dial it down, but it's like, are we ever going to be able to swim again? And I give swim lessons, for triathletes, and I do swim clinics, and it's, again, maximizing, right, minimum amount of space. I'm like, I could fit 6 people in a lane and teach them how to swim,
Yeah.
and it's like, damn, I won't be able to put 6 people in a lane because,
Now,
they're
yeah,
breathing
now it's
on each
closer to
other.
like 6 people in a pool than 6 people in a lane.
Exactly. And so I don't know. I mean, obviously, if a vaccine pops up or whatever, then maybe we will be able to go back to normal. But I think as a race director, and even, my side job, or maybe my primary job, I haven't decided yet, is
Mm-hmm.
a teacher, same thing. It's like, do I want to be in a, plexiglass tube teaching my students,
Yeah,
what
right.
is it going to look like, because we send our children to school to be socialized. And if I have to stay away from them, or I can't, shake a kid's hand, or, high five them or something like that, like that's weird.
Exactly. Or if you have
And
to like walk around like an astronaut with a hazmat suit on or something. I don't, because we
right,
just don't know what it's going to look like. You know, I think 3 months ago we would have said that's ridiculous, but right now I think that's a real option, as much
right.
as we
And
joke
we're
about it.
seeing, people who joked about it now getting sick.
Uh-huh.
Like, because at first you're like, it's no big deal, whatever, I'll just do this because, unfortunately I'm just such a freaking rule follower. So I was like, I'm going to stay home, and do whatever. And then, I'm staying home, and then I'm watching other people are like, yeah, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And they go out and do it. And it's like, okay, cool. But then they're sick and you're like, damn, it is real. Because there's a part of me that wants to doubt this is real, right? I'm sitting at home. I'm like, I'm just doing it because I'm a good girl, and it's like, but maybe it's just all fake. And I can, we were just staying home to just be careful or
Uh-huh.
cautious. And then people get sick and you're like, all right.
Yeah, it is real. I think the most
Yeah.
chilling moment for me was like for me when I noticed the world had turned and we entered a new world was there was a Tuesday night NBA game and the Utah Jazz, I forget who they were playing, and Rudy Gobert of the Jazz, the
Yeah.
star player, tested positive. And they showed an interview he did maybe a few days ago where he's like, this isn't real. And he went around and touched every single reporter's microphone. And then he came back positive with it. And then it's like, dun, dun, dun. Yeah, now who's got it? And now what does that
Right.
mean? And then everything shut down. But you're right. It's hard to take it seriously when it's something invisible. I think we're creatures that need, there's a, I don't want to say majority, but a large part of our brain that operates on sight and what our
Yes.
brain's dedicated to. So when it's something we can't see, it's hard to fathom how that can be real.
Right. Yeah. And again, it's just until somebody gets sick, right? Or until, I was looking at some page on Facebook and they were talking about like signs for Lubbock this weekend. And it was like, something like when somebody had and they were, of course, all in bad taste. And they're like, oh, you think you can't breathe now? Wait until your grandma, catches what you bring home or something like that. And I was all, damn, but
Yeah.
people, I mean, there's certain areas of this country that are getting blasted. I mean, in our county, we've had 5 deaths, And, of course that's 5 too many. But on the other end, it's like my mother lives in a small town in New Jersey and they've had like 80. And, their
Mm-hmm.
town is the size of Rohnert Park.
Yeah,
And
the
you're
tri-state
going,
area is
yeah, I mean,
got hit with a sledgehammer by this virus.
well, and part of it is, again, points of contact, right? Is, a lot of people where I grew up, they get on a bus and they go into New York City every day.
Yep.
So, how many things do you touch in a bus? How many like door, things do you push or all that other stuff? And East Coast people have a tendency of being like, screw you, like that's just bullshit.
Yeah.
We're gonna be all right.
Get the
and
fuck out of here.
Exactly. And then, all of a sudden they're like, having reefer trucks on the side of the road with all the bodies in it because they have no room
Mm-hmm.
to, the hospital morgues or even regular morgue. And, so they got that lesson hard and fast. We're here, we're not getting that lesson hard and fast, but it may still come. And, I don't know. But, in terms of racing, who knows? We have our race is September 27th. Ironman is October. And, we'll see if it goes. I'm training my athletes as if October's coming and this is what they're doing. And, I mean, as a triathlete training, I think there's been a lot of stops and starts, because I think people first were like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to keep training. And then it got postponed and they're like, I'm just going to eat, 5,000 bags of chips and be depressed and not get out of my jammies. And then you're like, oh shit, the race is coming. I don't want to be one of those people lying on the side of the road and, whatever. And so now people are starting to kick it up again. And, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, right now the conversation is 18 months for a vaccine, so that puts us into September of next year.
That's such a mind fuck for me. I because right now there's some level of me believes that and has a knowing that, yeah, that's a likely outcome. But there's another part of me that wants to race so badly that was like, no fucking way. No way it'll be that long. So
right.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom.
People are racing. I mean, they're talking about it on the East Coast. There's going to be an Ironman in Maine, and they're talking. I think that one's August. So yeah, there's other races that are going to supposedly happen, and we'll see what happens as times go on. Now, obviously, Maine is probably a really good place to go race. Yep. I mean, it's probably spread out. People, although who knows now? Like a bunch of people will go to that race because I know they're having it. But for the most part, certain areas are okay, because of the natural distance, right? Where you get more concentrated areas like around here, like they canceled the New York City Marathon, right? Not doing it. You can't have 40,000 people, shoulder to shoulder, breathing heavy, running down, the street.
I know they made Boston a virtual. So like all these huge events, that might be our future, is that we might see more smaller local events start to really flourish because the lower numbers, who knows?
Well, it would, I mean, it's nice for me.
yeah. You could put on a couple races a year.
Right. But again, I'm not necessarily having that type of athlete that's going to be competing with Ironman. It's like when I set my date, I just choose my date. I'm not worried, oh, Ironman's coming, I'm going to lose athletes. I may lose athletes who are choosing to volunteer for it because, and that's the thing. It's like, if you do get the opportunity, of course, not now, but, when it comes up, like volunteering is a great way to get introduced to the sport.
That is such a good point.
You get to help people. We all want to be helpers. And when you get to be there with somebody who's, falling apart at whatever mile or something like that, you get to talk them through it, and they appreciate it. And as an athlete, there's times like crawling up Chalk Hill and I was like, I'm going to die, and some lady's like, you're doing great, keep going. And it's like, oh, I am.
Yes, there's something magical about that. Even though on a level we know that they're just clapping for everybody, it feels special and it feels good. And that's what I think is hard to translate and tell people about the energy that we all come together to create on race day. But I am so 100% with you when it comes to volunteering to check out the sport. Because I remember volunteering for the first year Ironman had bought Vineman, and it was still up in Windsor. I volunteered that year, And I was on the fence. I wanted to do a full, but I didn't know if I had it in me. And not only seeing, different people from different walks of life and different body types finish the race, but it demystified it for me. It wasn't just a YouTube clip of, someone, Michael Phelps kind of body, like completely ripped,
right,
or a Jan Frodeno or a Daniela Reef, like finishing it with ease and just like flying, doing 5-minute miles, like the genetic freaks of nature they are. So, but seeing like regular, real people do it. And not only that, but it feels good to help an athlete. It feels good to help someone and say, like, I had a part in somebody finishing an Ironman or a triathlon or a race of whatever kind. It's a team effort. When speaking of all walks of life, I wanted to ask you, what it's like being in the sport that's predominantly white, as an athlete of color. And because Lindsay described her experience, when she sees other Black athletes, she'll give a wave and be like, oh my God, another African-American out here. What's it like? Because you spoke of not having a lot of role models in the sport.
right. And well, it is. And it's, we always laugh because there's this thing that Black people do is like when you see each other, you nod.
Yeah.
You're like, I see you. And it was funny because, one day I was sitting here and my daughter's a quarter Black, but looks pretty Black. And my wife and son are white. And so we were watching Blackish and they were talking about, he was trying to convince his kid about the nod. And his kid's like, what? And it totally didn't get it. And my daughter was like, whoa, wait, what? And I'm like, dude, when you see people that are like you need to acknowledge that you see them. And she's like, really? And I'm like, there's not many of us out here. And this is our moment, And when I'm in a race and I see another Black athlete, I'm like,
Yeah.
And you kind of feel giddy because you're like, oh, you're here too, kind of thing. And, Ironmans talk about, 1% of their athletes are, Black athletes. And, it's just not that type of sport. And, I belong to a Facebook group for Black triathletes and, it's got, 4,000, almost 5,000 members. And it's super cool because there is that camaraderie of like, hey, you're like me, or at least you look like me. And of course, there's different conversations that you have, because hair is a big one, right? Like, what do you do for your hair? How do you keep yourself from, drying up and doing whatever? And for a lot of it, some of the conversation is around swimming and, what does it look like? And so it's cool because some of the people in the group, like Max Fennell and Sika Henry, Max is he's the first Black triathlete, professional triathlete. And he lives, I think, South Bay. And, so it's like on one level, I get to kind of be rub elbows with professional triathlete, right?
Yes.
So it's like, hey man, what do you do? Kind of thing, which I didn't have before. So what a cool experience to kind of be there. And then Sika Henry, I can't remember, last year she crashed. I think in Austin or whatever, brutal crash, like face first, like she was going 30 and then all of a sudden she just stopped or whatever. And, but on the site, we were all following. So so it actually created this community of like Sherpas where if people know you're in the area and they live in the area, they'll come out and they'll support you because you're a Black triathlete. And so we had information about her, like right there. They're like, okay, taking her. And, her parents ended up, she was in the hospital for a while. And Ironman is actually doing, started a thing. And I don't even know because all their little videos seem to got thrown off with the virus times here.
Yeah.
But they were tracking her because she was on her way to become the first Black female triathlete. And, and she's doing her stuff. And, now it's a year later and she's recovered and, that kind of stuff. But it's 2020 and we're getting, finally pros into the fold here.
Yeah.
And, so for the kids coming up, they do have somebody that they can look at and go, if they want to, right? They could seek them out and go, hey, look, these are these two people that are doing it.
That's important. Yeah.
But it's, and I don't know what keeps people away from it. I'm not quite sure, I mean, obviously it's a little sadistic group that's, wanting to participate in triathlon in the first place. And, I mean, unfortunately where I live here, right, I looked at statistics the other day because I was like, oh, I wonder how many Black, people are actually in Sonoma County. And it's like, there's almost 500,000 people in Sonoma County, and there's 7,700 Black people.
Yeah,
So, and then you figure how many of those are triathletes or athletes at all, So
exactly.
probably like,
Right. So how many people
you
are coming to
know,
races? I mean,
right.
a
And
handful, maybe a literal handful, people you can count on two
right.
hands.
And, so it's not happening, right? It's like you're not really seeing that. And again, this is my area. Other parts of the country are not having this situation. Like when you go to Chicago or Atlanta, or certain parts of the Carolinas, right? There's a lot of Black athletes that are out there and they're starting to test out triathlon, but we're not getting that here. And, for me, it's like I said, I'm kind of the gateway person. So I'm thinking if I can get anybody interested in the sport, then eventually people are going to start getting over their fears and wanting to participate. We have a pretty good, 1/4 of our population in this county is Latino. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I have about 3 or 4 athletes of race that are Latino. And again, there's barriers with swimming,
Yeah.
not knowing how to swim. I mean, yesterday morning I woke up to that family in New Jersey who all drowned in a pool. They bought a
Mm-hmm.
house and, the kid went in the pool and then somebody goes to
Oh
save
God, that's
the kid
heartbreaking.
and then somebody else goes to save them and all 3 of them are drowned. And people are making comments like, why would you buy a house with a pool or, whatever. And it's like, regardless of that situation, there are 3 humans that are dead because they didn't know how to swim.
Yes.
And it's a huge, huge health crisis, especially in this county, because we do have water everywhere. We have the beach and, our beach is not hospitable by any means. So,
No, I just last
anybody,
weekend I watched someone get rescued by, a helicopter came out and the beach patrol came out. It's easy to drown even for good swimmers out here.
yes. And, I mean, you go out there and you're thinking you're knee deep and you're golden and you're not. You get smacked down, dragged out, and then that's the end of it. We have rivers here that, especially here, like on the East Coast, a lot of the stuff is man-made, so there's not so many underwater obstacles. But here it seems like, the Army Corps of Engineers, go Army, they are like, we could just flood this area and then it will be water.
Yep.
And they don't care. There's trees there or bridges or whatever that's underneath.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an obstacle race as you're swimming sometimes around here or around a lot of the stuff that's in there. So it's, swimming's definitely an obstacle, I think, for athletes of color. And then, of course, the equipment, and right now, like you can't buy a thing, I was trying to buy weights because I was like, oh, maybe I should go and get heavier weights. And you go on Amazon, it's like $150 for a set of 10-pound dumbbells. And it's like,
Yeah.
that
Fuck
doesn't
off for
seem
that.
right.
Exactly.
Right?
And a 3-month wait.
Right. And then, you go to places like I went to Walmart and, looking at bikes and there's not one bike on the rack. Like every bike has been purchased. So, I don't know if this is the time to try a triathlon, it may be a 5K, 10K time,
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's also people that aren't riding bikes that you can borrow stuff from and do whatever. I mean, that's how I got started. I borrowed a bike and then, took off from there.
I borrowed my dad's bike for my first few triathlons.
There you go. And that's how you get started. But, definitely, does the sport need some color? For sure. Does every sport need color? Pretty much. Right. I mean, this is kind of where we are, is that, there's definitely some barriers in terms of, even what people that have teams are looking at, like, the makeup of their team and, the cultural makeup of teams and stuff. And, there's some guys that have a race club down in LA that are all Black cyclists. And,
cool.
the HBCUs are doing all that stuff, right? They want to see, like, hey, we can have a triathlon team and, all that other stuff. So I think even Black people are starting to embrace the sport and not thinking it's some crazy unicorn kind of thing that's happening out there. And I think the more, we start to embrace it, then I think the sport will accept us.
I think so.
Make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I think I wouldn't have such a passion for diversity had I not served in the Marine Corps, where I met people from so many different backgrounds and so many different racial makeups that it made everything better. It made everything better because it wasn't the same person, you know. And I am a big believer that, you know, there shouldn't be sports where people should walk by and say, well, that's nice for them. You know, it's,
Right.
you know, it's just more fun when you have a variety of people included and everybody knows that they have access to it. So, Dana, you are exactly what triathlon needs. And I love your spirit. I love being friends with you. You're a great role model for not only veterans, for women, for athletes of color, but just for people and beginners, but just for the sport in general. So thank you. Where can people find out about your race? Where can people find you and see what you're up to?
So my website is djsfitnessevolution, all one word.com. And they can see there's a page for events and they can see what we got going on, or you can just Google Dana Jones Fitness Evolution Triathlon. I haven't gotten real original with the name. But yeah, they can find out that. And then I have Facebook pages as well.
We'll link to all these in the show notes so people can look there and see it.
That'll be great. And I'll send you all that stuff. And, you know, this is important. And I appreciate what you're doing because, you know, and you and I have talked about this before, especially I think as a veteran of color, there's not a lot of stuff around here. And a lot of the groups that I was kind of tapping into before, you know, were like the Vietnam vet guys.
Yeah, exactly. A little different.
And you're like, hi, you know, and of course, because, you know, I never got deployed, it changes the aspect. And for a long time, you know, the old school thinking was that I wasn't a veteran because, you know, even though I served, I didn't serve under, you know, any kind of wartime situation. And, you know, the thing is that my experiences are pretty similar, you know, in terms of coming across people and, you know, from all over the world. And, you know, it gave me a good experience, but it also, you know, there's a camaraderie that I enjoyed about it. And I think that has given me the camaraderie, you know, or at least the taste of the camaraderie that I want to have in triathlon. Like I want people to have that shared experience and know that we're all a team, you know, even though it's an individual sport, I'm rooting for you. And, you know, it's a big deal. And so I think that what you're doing is very important because you're connecting people from all walks of life. And, you know, we're starving for that. You know, we want to know that we're connected because right now we're not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're physically and socially distancing. So to know that, you know, I can slap on my earbuds and go and listen to you guys chat about it and laugh about, you know, stuff is good. You guys are doing good work and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I'm giving you a big Zoom air hug right here.
Yes.
So thank you, Dana, for coming on. And we'll have to have some more conversations on this show because I know you have a lot to offer. But thank you for coming on.
No problem.
Alrighty. That concludes today's episode of the Age Groupies Podcast with me, Lindsay Hiken, and my co-host, Mike Ergo. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can follow the show on Instagram at Age Groupies, join our Age Groupies page on Facebook, and look us up by name, Lindsay Hiken and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have questions, comments, or topic ideas, feel free to email us at agegroupies@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, as this really helps us get more exposure while we try to grow this little venture. And of course, if you have friends you think might like the show, please be sure to share it with them. But for now, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week.